Welcome to the West Tigers podcast, Idioto episode number 72. Always very nice to do a podcast after a win. We'll talk about that game very soon. But what did you think of the weekend action round 3?
Yeah, g'day, Joel. It was obviously great to have the footy back, but even better was the product that was put on the field. I was cautiously optimistic, but pleasantly surprised just how good it looked. I've actually got some of the stats down. There were, I think, 40 less penalties blown across the round, and there were 11 less penalty goals per weekend. I think we went from 16 to 5. Ball was in play more play the balls. We saw fatigue. We saw everything we wanted to see, or everything I wanted to see was there. I don't know whether it will last. Coaches will adjust, but I thought it was a 10 out of 10. Best week I've seen for a long time. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. And it wasn't just that psychological effect of having the game back after having the break. It was a better quality. It was a better spectacle. And I think that the wrestle wasn't as prominent. The game was so much more about what we like about it, which is the fatigue, which is the speed of, as we've said before, speed doesn't necessarily translate to a good game, but it was exciting to watch. It wasn't all stop-start. It was nicely paced. It was a better spectacle for us to watch, especially, when you watch the Tigers games, it's a little bit different, but when you're watching the games that you don't care about, I enjoyed those more.
That's the big point for me. I watched that Penrith-Newcastle game. It was a cracker on Sunday afternoon. And we've said before that rugby league is an imperfect game. And I don't mind games with errors if it brings fatigue in. We saw games with plenty of errors, but because there was sort of fatigue, it was always exciting. It was quite unpredictable, less structured play. So big tick. The other thing I was surprised about, the fake crowd noise, Joel. I actually was very sceptical about it. But I think given you've got a huge TV audience at the moment, I think it was over 1.3 million watched South Roosters, and it made you feel they weren't doing the wide camera shots, so you couldn't see the no crowd much. It made you sort of forget about the fact that there was no one there. I thought it was really effective.
Yeah, I agree. And we've now had the ability to be able to compare back to those first couple of rounds, round 2, where those effects weren't there. I remember watching, I can't remember who Canterbury was playing. It might have been Parramatta. It could have been the first game without a crowd, and all you heard was the players. So it was like Channel 9 still had the same on-the-ground microphone levels going, but it was actually more fake in a way than the crowd effects, which I thought worked quite well.
Yeah, I thought it was excellent in terms of the TV product. When you're watching, I'm with you in those round 2 games when you can hear the crickets in the background. You sort of think, oh, this is a game played at the local park, whereas it felt like NRL games on the weekend with that sort of sound effect. So I think, I don't know if Peter Volandes, that was his decision as well, Joel, but he's getting everything right at the moment. Yeah,
so far so good, and really good for the game, because in so many other parts of the world there is no sport, and rugby league's been given a bit of a free kick and getting some exposure that it might not have otherwise got. And thankfully the product's been really good. The games have been great. I mean, you show that Newcastle Parramatta game and a few of the other games from the weekend to people who might not be rugby league fans. You might just convert a few.
Oh, absolutely. Especially in, I think, Fox Sports in America. I think they've got over 60 million subscribers. So, I mean, they love their contact sport over there, their NFL. So, you'd like to think a few of them would be tuning in a bit more. Especially, it's just good to see Joel Rugby League for once. I think just ahead of the AFL. I think they caught them a little bit on the back foot for once, which is good to see. It doesn't happen often.
Yeah, absolutely. That's completely right. We're going to talk about Josh Reynolds in 60 minutes. We're going to talk about ANZ Stadium, Campbelltown Stadium, Leichhardt Oval again.
Groundhog Day, Joel.
Bankwest as well. There's been some possible developments there. We won't harp too much on that because we've talked about it so many times at length, and there's nothing really concrete, but we'll get to that. Do you want to just quickly, before we talk about the West Tigers game, look at the tipping results? I've added up the scores, Eddie, and neither of us tipped the draw. We both ended up on the same amount of points from the tipping, 3.5 points.
I'm surprised you did that well, because I remember having a go at you for going rogue. You tipped the Titans, who were horrible, but you did tip the Warriors. So I'll give you credit for that. We both tipped the Tigers, so we did well there. But what was the highest score this weekend?
Hang on, you're having to go at me for tipping the Titans. You tipped the Bulldogs to beat Manly.
No, I didn't. No.
Oh, no, hang on. Then you have finished in front of me. Okay, 4.5.
Yeah, I might have Joel on the tipping site tip the Bulldogs, but on the podcast preview, I guarantee I meant to tip Manly. So you're probably right, but I didn't think the Bulldogs were going to win. I just tipped wrong if I did that.
All right. No, I think my notes are a little bit off here, so I think we'll give you that.
You're probably right. I probably just went the wrong home. That's the thing you got to check, I suppose, with tipping comps this year, Joel, is who's home and who's away, because it doesn't really matter, because you got to be careful, don't you?
That's right. Exactly. We're going to produce another podcast later in the week ahead of our game against the Titans. I have to say, Eddie, I'm going to kick it off straight away by saying I'm not optimistic, because these traditionally have been the kind of games that we have struggled in. I think the club will get a bit of positive press this week. We're in the top 8. We're up against a team that literally hasn't won for a year. It's conceded 30 points the last couple of games. I'm terrified of this game against the Titans.
Yeah, well, I suppose I should be terrified. I'm actually confident.
Okay.
Don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing, but I will throw a tantrum on here, Joel, if we lose next week. That's my promise, okay? That won't happen.
We're looking forward to seeing that. Let's rewind back and look at the game against the Sharks. The biggest thing that stands out for me is that the right edge and the amount of trouble that did cause us, or Cronulla was able to cause to us on that right edge. But conversely, we moved Garner and Luciano Leilua to opposite sides, and that did seem to help. Nofaluma, 50 minutes of that game, I'm thinking, why do we keep picking this guy? But the last half an hour of the game, he is the hardest player to sort of say we should keep or get rid of, because then he has this mediocre sort of game and then scores that try and does this and does that. And a lot of people had him as man of the match.
Yeah, well, that's sort of David Nofaluma. He's a pretty good attacking player for a guy who's not a real speedster. He's always had that sort of ability to do something out of nothing. That try was the match winner, really. It broke Cronulla's heart. It came out of nothing, and he did well, because he spotted what was a really lazy Josh Dugan on the blind side there. But you're right, Joe, going back to the right side defence, it's still a concern. It's not just the tries they were leaking. It's almost that they sort of tended to be submitting even at midfield. They tend to be giving up a lot of yardage, and whether it's a lack of trust or just maybe even a lack of pace with Benji and Joey Leilua together. There's not much pace there. They did have, one of the best left-sided players in the game, Wade Graham, going at them the whole game. And you'd have to say it was it had to be an improvement what they did against Newcastle, which is horrific. Yeah. But, teams will no doubt, even off the back of that, keep targeting that side. I don't know if we can change it anymore at the moment. I think it's just going to have to be Madge and the boys working hard at it to get better.
Line speed. I think that if no doubt Cronulla watched the game against Newcastle, line speed. When the Sharks were in the game and they scored 16 unanswered points, their line speed was fantastic. And I think what shot the Sharks in the foot, as much as we focus on our own performance, what shot them in the foot was their bench. They lost Fafita just before the game. Their bench had no thrust whatsoever. Our bench, although criticised before the game, did better than their bench, and I think that was a big difference. They seemed to run out of fuel and weren't able to find that other gear. But when that period, especially the last 25 minutes of the first half, their line speed, they were doing everything right to beat the West Tigers.
Well, for me, the most pleasing thing was the scoreless second half, because they had gone into half-time off the back of 3 tries. And even, again, Joel, when we hit the front, you're always thinking, well, we're going to let them back in here. It's 2016, 22-16. We missed a couple of goals we should kick. But we finished the game really strong. And, it's interesting you mentioned the bench. I sort of wrote down the stats, and I think all our bench players had 50 metres or less. But you also mentioned they looked fitter, which is the main thing. Yeah. And I think under these new rules, there were some teams that were exposed this week. A big Brisbane side was really exposed against Parramatta. And maybe we're going to have to look at the bench a little bit differently, rather than, obviously you want the meters, but you're also going to have guys who are reliable tacklers and can play longer minutes. So, I first looked at stats and, well, this bench, I don't quite like it the way it is, but a scoreless second half, and we finished well over the top of the Sharks, who looked really tired.
Yeah, well, the game has changed that much that, if you look at the impact that Billy Walters had off the bench, a pat on the back, a couple of his runs really did help turn the momentum and really did make a difference. But, I think Adam Dewey is the fullback, and Adam Dewey's going to be the fullback now for quite a while. But, maybe if you could have two forwards on the bench, I don't know, maybe an Oliver Clark and a Zane Musgrove, a Billy Walters and a Corey Thompson. If you could throw Corey Thompson out there when the forwards are getting tired. He is such a damaging runner. That's the strength of his game, is what he can do up the middle. There could be an argument for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I don't know. Like you said, Billy Walters was excellent that 20, 25 minutes, and the value of having a fresh hooker there was seen. I thought that combination was perfect. I thought Harry Grant was close to my man of the match on debut. But yeah, you'd maybe want someone like a Musgrove against a team like a Canberra or Parramatta, someone who's going to be more powerful, potentially coming onto that bench. I don't know whether Corey Thompson would fit into my bench.
Yeah. Just an idea. I thought Lugano was very good. He switched over opposite sides during the game. I thought, he is a left side specialist, and he seems to have been a left side specialist. But I thought he did well on the right. I thought Alex Twal was pretty amazing. Played the whole game. I think we now have our lock, our fullback, and our hooker. And I think that's a big advantage for the team.
Good point. I think the spine's crucial to any team's success. If you watched Canterbury play last night, they have no spine and they have no chance this year. And Adam Dewey, at his best, will be an upgrade on what we had with Corey Thompson, and Harry Grant is already, after one game, a huge upgrade on what we had in round 1 and round 2. His combination with Luke Brooks is going to be really exciting. And Alex Twal was excellent at lock. I think he was the only forward for us to run for over 150 metres. And as Madge actually stressed in the press conference, he said he's very, very strong defensively, tightens up our middle, and Harry Grant was great in the middle. So, the back rowers all played 80 minutes, Joel. So that was a good effort. Garner, Lucci, Leilua and Twal, all 80-minute games.
Yeah, and that's what you need. And they were effective 80 minutes because we were, I thought, defensively, around the middle, really solid. Realistically, if we were able to shut down those couple of plays that were on our right, I thought defensively we were very, very good. I think we're well placed for a challenge this year because I still see some improvement in this team, especially as that spine plays more games. If the injury gods are kind to us.
Yeah, I still have a fairly big concern that it's only small sample size, 3 games, but 72 points conceded, Joel. So, I know a fair chunk of that was against Newcastle, but that's an average of 24 points a game. You look at some of the big teams already. Parramatta have conceded 14 points in total in 3 games. Canberra have conceded 18 points in 3 games. Manly have conceded 32 in 3 games, and Roosters 40. So all those teams, 8, 9, 10 points a game. So that's the benchmark. I don't think we're anywhere near that, but I do agree with you that there's more upside in this team than there has been for the last couple of years. There's more potential to grow and be more dangerous. And I think defensively there's still some question marks, but I think there's potential to finish higher this year than there was the last 2 years.
Yeah, well, you think about how many points have been scored on that right edge. If we can tidy that right edge up, again, I've advocated for BJ Leilua to be on the other side and put Moses and Nofaluma together because Moses is a good defensive setter. And everything that I've ever heard and what I remember from the Roosters when he was playing for the Roosters on the Knights was that BJ Leilua was a left centre. I don't know why we're playing him on the right. Apparently, he was on the right for Canberra out of need rather than out of desire.
Okay. Well, also his combination with Jordan Rapana was unbelievable. That's probably why he was paired with him. But it'd be interesting to see because I think, like you said, Moses, he was really good defensively. That side, that whole left edge was good, but still like to see more involvement from him. It was his first game for a long time, so I'm not going to tee off on him. But I think we need to get a little bit more attack out of Moses this year.
Yeah, because I don't have any recollection of Moses doing anything at all in that first half. I have no memory of him touching the ball. I've got in my notes a note about Moses Mbye in the second half, and I said, did he play in the first half? So more involvement from Moses would be nice because we want a bit more threat other than just what Marshall brings, I suppose you'd say.
Yeah, I think we finished 7 runs, 70 metres. There was a few good dummy half runs, and that's one thing that Joey Leilua did well, get some really good yards out of our own end, because we were struggling a bit, sort of tackle 1, tackle 2, trying to come out of our own end. But yeah, I still think that, 72 points in 3 games. I think there's stuff to clean up. And like you said, this week will be a bit of a litmus test, even though it's the bottom team. It's the sort of game we usually blow or keep very interesting. So it'll be interesting to see how ruthless we are.
A new question for you that I'll ask you every week after a game. Eddie, are we going to make the 8?
Well, I said at the start, I'll say yes to start with, because I did say on our first podcast, I put a bit disclaimer in, but I tipped us to run 10th, but I said if Harry Grant joins us, we'll run 7th. And we've won our first game since he joined us, so I'm going to say yes. And you ask me next week when we lose, I'll probably say no.
Well, the question will be coming. So, fingers crossed that my anxiety about this game is misplaced, and it's a good performance from the Tigers. It is an important game, but we'll talk about that more. We might have a special extra person on the podcast this week as well, and it might be a slightly different format as well. So stand by for that later on in the week, because the team will be up tomorrow, and we'll share that team on the Facebook page. If you watch or listen to the West Tigers podcast, make sure you follow us on Facebook. Just search for West Tigers podcast, because we share all the news and other bits and pieces that come through. Speaking of news, although I use that in abbreviated commas, neither of these stories really are news at this stage. But Josh Reynolds certainly was news. Did you watch 60 Minutes, Eddie? What did you think about Josh? It was train wreck TV in a way, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I feel sorry for him. I mean, he's maybe a bit naive, but still, what a piece of work that Arabella, whoever is, but it was train wreck TV. But you could see how someone can mess with your life like that, and you can understand how it would have been a bad enough time last year as it is, with injuries and stuff. But with all that going on in the background, you realise there's more to some of these footballers' lives than what sort of is on the surface sometimes. Yeah,
they are an easy target. I think the thing that came across is, I think that Josh Reynolds is, I think he's under the surface. He's a good guy, and I think that was used against him a bit. I think that was he should have been a lot more. Surely within the clubs, they try and educate these guys, like psychologists and things like that. I'm sure, to make sure that their life away from the football field is as successful and as enriched as possible, and that they're making the right decisions. It just seemed to me like he just was so naive, which really surprised me. For somebody who, he's not 18 or 19, he should have been a little bit more worldly and careful than I think what he was.
Yeah, well, he certainly got burnt, but it's sort of it was difficult to watch it. I mean, I assume she probably only went on that 60 minutes to get paid. I think they paid her to do that, because she certainly didn't come up with any form of truth or answers to any of the questions they provided. So I'm sure he'd be pretty happy to have that chapter in his life over.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Josh Reynolds moving forward, if he is named in the team this week or when he will play. It must be, frustrating few years for him, that's for sure. Yeah.
Well, Michael Ennis again went into bat for him on their show last night. I think he's running a personal crusade to get Josh Reynolds out of the Tigers and to the Bulldogs. I don't know what he wants. The problem is, though, I don't think he could get his head around the fact that just even for Canterbury, even if Canterbury only want to pay 200 for this year, it still counts as 800 under their cap for this year. I didn't know that, but then why on earth would Canterbury want him if that's the case?
Yeah. Oh, well, we'll see what happens. I still think I have a feeling that it might happen. So we'll just keep monitoring it, see what happens. I guess the thing is, I didn't watch that game. We've spoken about Nick Meaney in the past and goal kicking. That's something that should be mentioned out of the Sharks game. Goal kicking is still a problem. And I know Nick Meaney is someone who I think both you and I would like to have in the back line, and he is a good goal kicker. I mean, those sorts of deals, even if we could do a deal for the rest of the year for Josh Reynolds, we've got to get a goal kicker. It's just what we have is not going to get us there.
Yeah, well, there's an old saying in the NFL, Joel, where the quarterback is the obviously the superstar of the team over there. And there's an old saying where they say if you've got 3 or 4 quarterbacks, you've actually got none. And that reminds me of our goal kickers. We've got 3 or 4, which means you've got none because they're constantly rotating, trying to work out who the best one is. I think maybe the way to go is, because you've got a left foot kicker and a right foot kicker, is kick them both on their preferred side of the field.
Yeah, yep.
Moses Mbai and Benji Marshall, because I couldn't tell you who's a better goal kicker, but I know it is easier to kick from one side of the field if you're left or right footed. So, Nick Meaney hasn't been playing great for Canterbury, but he is a goal kicker and he would be cheap, and he could be someone that's maybe tradable with Josh Reynolds. So it's something that they could look at. They've thought outside the box already this year and it's worked.
Yeah, exactly. What about home grounds? There was talk not that long ago that the West Tigers' future was potentially an upgraded ANZ Stadium, because everything was pushing ahead with that. That might change the landscape. We were playing at Bank West, expecting the ANZ Stadium upgrade to happen. It looked almost, if you put 2 and 2 together, you kind of looked like there maybe was a plan for the future of West Tigers. I know we've discussed it and said maybe that was something I was advocating for, that upgraded ANZ Stadium. Now that's not going to happen, and there's talk of 4 super suburban stadiums potentially on the horizon, including Campbelltown. I think it was the Sydney Morning Herald reporting that if that was to happen, West Tigers would play most of their games at this revamped Campbelltown Stadium alongside the new A-League team. But we just seem to be going around in circles, don't we?
Yeah, it is. But it's new leadership now, and it seems like it's new direction. And Pistol Pete V'landys seems to get what he wants. And if he wants upgrades to suburban grounds ahead of an 80,000 one at ANZ, then he will probably get it. So we've got to make sure, Joel, that whether it's Leichhardt or Campbelltown, that we're one of the 4 grounds is one of our home grounds to get an upgrade. Because I think a lot of fans probably want to play there, if it's 1 or 2 home grounds at Leichhardt or Campbelltown, but it's just the fact that haven't been touched really for 15 years that holds us back. But look, if they're going to upgrade Campbelltown and make it like a Bank West Stadium and have it out of action for 12 or 18 months and make it a 30,000 seater with great facilities, then it would be a no-brainer to play 8, 10, maybe all 12 games there. But it seems to change weekly. What do you think now about ANZ? Do you think that's would be on the back burner now, or it's just as it is? Would it still be as attractive to you as a future home ground?
Well, not without the reconfiguration. I mean, all of my reasoning for ANZ was that it was going to be reconfigured, and you factor in the geographical fact is that West is at Ashfield. There's going to be potentially a new West Balmain West Tigers Leagues Club in Rozelle. You got Flemington Markets. The reason why I was saying ANZ, well, at least it's we've got Concord and New Centre of Excellence. That's obviously where the club is being situated. Campbelltown then was. I don't see the synergy. I think if you go to Campbelltown in a lot of ways, it needs to be a proper move to Campbelltown, because this is just the whole West thing from even the 1990s, was that they were kind of at Campbelltown, kind of not, kind of there full time. It's still a mess. And it would be great to have the stadium at Campbelltown, but it sort of goes against what has looked like where the club has been going for the last couple of years. So it's an odd one. I don't think you'll ever see any significant upgrade at Leichhardt. That'll never happen.
I don't know whether, but it's not necessarily our club pushing for the upgrade at Campbelltown, is it, Joel? It's just probably one of the stadiums that the NRL thinks an area they can maybe have 2 or 3 teams play in. So it's not like it's a push, I don't think, from West Tigers to get that upgraded and play all our home games there. And we've spoke about, like, I've sort of been not against Campbelltown, but sort of thinking it's not going to be a permanent home because of the reasons you mentioned there. The fact we train at Concord, big fan base in the inner west, Ashfield Leagues, etc., etc. So it's interesting times, but you wouldn't say no to an upgrade of any of our grounds, would you?
No, exactly. And I've been on the record before saying the amount of potential and the opportunities in the Macarthur are enormous, and we're not doing the right thing by that area. Where we haven't done the right thing. I've still advocated, if there was proper facilities, if West Campbelltown was more part of the family, it's the logical place for the club to spend more time and be more situated, if not fully, but at least embracing it more. I mean, there is a mountain of opportunities there. This just flies in the face of what we've been hearing and seeing. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but it's all I can think is it's different leadership and things change quickly, and you're probably going to get sprayed on the forum again, Joel, for pushing your Campbelltown agenda.
All I want is just some stability. I just want a home, and it would be nice to have something that brings the fans together once and for all, and just make the decision and get on with it. Because at the moment, the travelling Wilburys thing, I don't think it's the best for the club. I think that we need to make an adult decision at some stage, whatever it is, even if it's the new Moore Park Stadium, if that ever gets built, or it's Bank West. Just make a decision and stick with it.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting. I saw a few of the cardboard fans out there at ANZ. At Campbelltown yesterday. Apparently, there was one of the world's most famous serial killers made it into the crowd. Joel, there were a few hiccups there with the crowd. Some people were using their dark sense of humour, but that was another little thing I thought was a good idea. But they might have to have a look at it. Whose actually faces are on the cardboard cut out?
What if there was a Todd Greenberg cardboard?
Yeah, well, you're giving people ideas, Joel.
Exactly. All right, Eddie. We'll keep an eye on all the latest West Tigers news and come back and we'll have the team, as I said earlier, and we'll do another podcast later in the week.
Sounds good. See you, Joel.